All right, hello everybody, and welcome back to Betting 1,000, where we talk with the heavy hitters in the mortgage and real estate industry. And today, I've got a real treat for you guys because I've got a good friend. Michael Tomlin and his wife Caroline are good friends with Laurel and I, and Michael is a top real estate agent in the country. He is literally one of the top 1.5% of agents in the country by America's Best and Real Trends. He's a top 1,000 agent in Florida. He's a top 5% of Coldwell Banker agents globally 4 years consecutively. This guy sells some real estate. He knows the business inside and out. He's just an absolutely great guy and a great family man and a dear friend. So, Michael, great to have you with us.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
So, Michael, let's talk today about, I guess we'll start with the hot topic before we get into talking with you about how to work with mortgage lenders
Mhm.
and loan officers and all that stuff. But everybody's been talking about the NAR settlement. That's been top of mind for most real estate and mortgage professionals over the last 90 days. I personally have said many times, I think it's much ado about nothing. And
Mhm.
I know that as we kind of talked offline,
Mhm.
you've got some of the same feelings, but it is a major shift that we're
Yeah.
seeing in the industry. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
Love to hear from your perspective what you're seeing on the ground as to the impact from the NAR settlement, and not only that, but how is that affecting buyers and sellers and agents and the transactions? Love to get your perspective on that.
So pre-NAR settlement, it was always you always knew what you were going to get paid, even on the buyer's agent, because at the end of the day, the listing agent's going to come in and say, "Hey, I'm going to charge you X amount, and we'll share a piece with that." There was some things that went on that brought about this settlement, and what's interesting about the settlement is that you know people scream doom and gloom when stuff like this happens. It's kind of silly to me because what I've learned is as the real estate industry changes, you begin to see there are your top level guys are always going to stay your top level guys because they know how to
Right.
adapt to changes that happens in the industry.
Yep.
And you, the other part that I think was really, really, really confusing, and I think is it's still going on when it first launched, was there was a different settlements what happened with different companies. So like I'm with Coldwell Banker Realty, which is under Anywhere Real Estate. Well, Anywhere Real Estate had their own settlement versus like EXP had their own settlement and Keller Williams had their own settlement. So everybody had their own settlement. And what I watched was different brokerages began to implement different best practices, come out with their own set of forms to help protect and be in compliance. And so there was a lot of different information being given, and it brought about, honestly, just a ton of confusion. I mean, and so I being me, pick up the phone and I started calling other top level producers and I go, "What are you seeing? What are you being told? How are you handling this? Here's how I am and this is what I'm being told and how I'm being taught." And so you begin to get a general consensus of, okay, I see how we can get here with this confusion and it's not misinformation, it's just different stuff getting shared. Um, but now it's pretty easy because you know I've got a ton of people that I'm working with who are selling their home at the moment, and I can count on one hand how many of those sellers are saying I'm not going to offer a commission to a buyer's agent. Okay, that's fine. If that's what you want to, if that's what you choose, fine. Understand that in the event that there is a buyer representation form that says, "Hey, by the way, um, if you're not offering compensation, I'm directing my agent to not show your house." So you have that going on as well, and sh- that takes some time to learn and adjust. Sometimes sellers just have to learn that, but buyers agents as well are going to go, "I'm going to provide the value here, and I'm going to show you what I'm worth. By the way, we're going to try to work this into the offer. So we need to make that keep that in the back of our minds when we present an offer, that here's where we are without the commission being paid by the seller. Here's where we are going to, where we're going to have to. So it's a lot more negotiation, a lot more back and forth. But the biggest thing that I think was up front was the kind of the confusion of information that was being passed between just brokerages.
Yep. Good observation. And I think we can all agree that, at the end of the day, I think the biggest impact that we're going to see out of the NAR settlement is those agents who were part-time, not doing a lot of sales, and really weren't investing in this as a career. It's
Yeah.
probably going to be difficult for them to survive,
Yeah.
and do well. But those who have been great agents, who have really committed to knowing their game, that bring a lot of value to the seller's agents, they're going to be in demand forever,
Yeah.
because there'd be no reason why the sellers wouldn't want them to be involved in that transaction if they're bringing a good buyer.
Right.
It all comes down at the end of the day to matching together to a great buyer with a great seller that qualifies for the loan and can move forward.
Exactly.
So, yeah, love that. So let's talk a little bit about. I'm There's so many people who watch this podcast who are in the mortgage arena, and I always love to hear the perspective of boots on the ground people on the
Mhm.
real estate side as to, from your perspective, what makes a great lender, what makes a great loan officer, what are you looking for? Because what I hear a lot from the loan officers is, well, agents just want the lowest rates. Now, I know that's not true. What they want is they want a great transaction and be represented well by their lender. But I'd love to hear your perspective on, what do you look for in a lender and a loan officer? What matters to you?
Yeah.
What services are important? And also, what drives you crazy? What are the things that you don't want them to do?
So the relationship between a loan officer or anybody in that arena with a real estate agent, we are inundated with people trying to get our business.
Yeah,
That's just the way it is, and understandably so. I get it. Um, it needs to be far more than just business transactions. The people that I tend to refer business to is people that I actually will have a conversation with that has nothing to do with real estate or mortgage. That we're genuinely it is a relationship based business, and I know you guys are the same way as those who sell real estate. This is a relationship over transactions. I care more about you and what's going on in your life than what I care about getting this deal closed, right? The deal closing will happen just because of the relationship. It's all about the relationship. And that's been my motto from the beginning of real estate, was relationships over transactions. I will always value that because that is the key component to our business. And so with mortgage and lenders and real estate agents, it's not this, hey, I'm going to treat you to a coffee or to a lunch and let's talk and you can give me your business. There's so much more that goes in there that you're like, yeah, you're a nice guy. Yeah, you get loans done. That's great. Cool. If I think about you, I'll send something to you. But it's much more like, I don't want to be seen as a another deal for you to close, right?
right.
That because that's almost where that is. I can tell you, I don't necessarily even get referred buyers from lenders, because I know there's a lot of lenders that do that. I don't even work that way. But so it's not, it's the exchange isn't that necessarily. It's the organic relationship and friendship that you have with those other people that really come forward. And the other side, there's one caveat to that though. The only caveat there is, where we live, we have to have certain types of loan products. Okay.
Yeah,
I had a guy, there was a lender up in Chicago that was doing a deal for a buyer, and he said, "Oh, we can do non-wordable, non-wordable, non-wordable." I said, "Okay, that's fine. If you say you can, like, I have sold enough property to know that you have to have an in-house serviced portfolio product, because this is not going to fit just a general condo type deal." I think this is a very specific kind of deal because of the building and the type of questionnaire that you're going to get. And he assured me. 2 weeks before closing, he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, we can't do this deal. We can't do this deal." And I said, "Well, why did you tell me you could?" right? There our area specifically because we live down here along the coast, we have very specific products. Everybody can do a VA. Everybody can do an FHA. Everybody can do a conventional. But there's specific type of products that I may not have necessarily the best relationship with you, but you are the only one that I know that could really close that kind of product because your company can service that kind of loan, and not everybody can. So
Mhm.
that's the only caveat that I would say, is that unless if it's not a relationship based type uh, um, kind of transaction there, then you better have some really good specialty.
I love it. Yeah. So that so dovetails into what I teach mortgage originators and lenders all the time is that at the end of the day, this industry is a relationship industry. It's not a transactional industry if you really want to be successful. And I see that with every top producer that I work with is they're the ones who are really focusing on building the trust and the loyalty of their partners.
Mhm.
They treat them like partners, which means they have a deep personal relationship with them that goes beyond just the transaction. And then you talked a little bit about the importance of product diversity and making sure that you've got some niche products. And I say this all the time to lenders: if you want to get in with a top producing realtor, do not walk in and ask them to be, or tell them that you want to be one of their primary lenders. That's just the dumbest thing you could ever say.
Right,
You want to walk in and say, look, how can I serve you today in areas you're not being served?
right,
And what do those look like? And all of a sudden you could say, well, hey, here's some areas of opportunity and products that I don't have access to, that if you have those, that's a way we can start a relationship. And then you build the relationship from that point forward. That really makes a difference.
right.
So I love that you're thinking the same way on that. Let me ask you this question. Open houses. Do you do many open houses? Is that something that you see a lot of in the marketplace you're in?
So here's what I'll tell you. I personally do not like to do open houses for the fact that in today's world, a lot of since COVID, let me phrase that, since COVID, open houses have really kind of tried, they've kind of, the activity really went down with open houses. I tell sellers up front, hey, listen, um, here's the secret. Open houses, they generate business. They don't necessarily sell your house. It might. There's a chance. Like if you look at the percentage, there's like a 3 or 4% chance that they could sell the house. But reality is it's more of a generate. But if you feel strongly about it, I will because I want to serve you in every way that I can. But
Great.
here's what and I'll do. There are agents that I know that 15 years ago, that's how they got their business. That's how they really started. They honed in a neighborhood or an area and they said, all right, I'm going to do open house every single day from this time, and I'm going to get to know the neighbors. I'm going to get to know this, and I'm going to know that's great. But my own personal style is not a, it was not an open house scenario.
Okay. Got it. Talk about what are the major no-nos. So when a lender's working with you as a realtor, what are the things that just drive you mad that lenders do that you wish they wouldn't do?
They don't communicate. You want to blow up a transaction so fast, don't provide any information. Don't provide updates to both buyer and seller because that will be the one thing that will crumble a deal faster. If you've got a seller who's antsy to sell and they're sitting there going, what's going on? When's the appraisal? Do we know where they are? Have they gotten conditional approval? Do we know? I mean, like, and they're asking questions and I'm sitting there going, I don't know, man. Like I've tried to call the buyer's agent. The buyer's agent said that, they'll ask for an update, but then it's a week goes by and then we still don't hear any. Like that is so incredibly frustrating. I think it's a lack of
Yep.
professionalism, as to be honest with you, because
Yep.
but
Agreed.
from a contractual standpoint, the buyer's agent supposed to provide us the information to the seller. Now, if I'm the buyer's agent, my lender that I have become friends with, I talk to regularly anyways. So I'm going to get that information. But if I'm on the other side and I've got the seller and I'm sitting here going, I don't know. I've called him, I've left him a message, I'm still not getting anything back from him. That is the one thing that, I'll add to this. That's the one thing. That's the one way I will never work with that lender, is because if I ever
Yep.
have somebody, they may have closed the deal, but they sucked at communication. They sucked at providing updates. They were terrible about it. And I just, for me, that is the biggest deal. Um, and then if I were to add anything else, I mean, obviously, I mentioned the story about where this guy said he could do something, comes to find out he couldn't because he just wasn't experienced or didn't have the knowledge. Kind of not essentially kind of lied out of just, his lack of knowledge. Um,
Yeah.
but those two things are probably the biggest. Just I will it's like I turn red just thinking about it because I'm like, you've got to do better. Got to do better. The lack of communication is a really, really big problem with a
Yep.
lot of people in the industry, because you have to think how many people are going to touch a real estate transaction outside of just your lenders, right? You've got 10 to 12 people. At some point it will
Yep.
be in the hands of somebody. And the only way to keep that gear turning and firing on all cylinders is by providing proper communication and updates to keep everybody informed. And then if there is a hiccup, we've had enough conversations to know to go, how can we overcome this? I had a deal a couple months ago that there was a situation that came up, and the cash to close was much higher than the buyer thought. And so I said, look, here are the comps. We're buying this under market value. Why don't we go back to the seller and ask if he will provide X amount of dollars for closing costs, and we can just raise the price of the home to cover the difference, and then you're not. And it was just a simple like conversation, but because we had had enough conversations leading up to that point, it was an easy way to just keep the deal going. And
Yeah.
so that's the number one issue that I run up against, just because with the saturation of lenders that are in the market.
Good. So you work predominantly on the listing side, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you also do the buyer side
Yes.
representation sometimes? Okay. So
Yep.
you've been on both sides of the
Oh,
transaction. I've got a
absolutely.
question I want to ask you that I'm curious about. As a on the listing side,
Hmm.
the seller side, because most mortgage loan officers, they generally work with the buyer's agents
Hmm.
because that's who they're representing
Yeah.
when they're representing the borrower. As a listing agent, how often and how many transactions do you think the lender who's working with the buyer's agent reaches out to you when they get the contract to introduce themselves, to build a relationship with you? How often does that happen?
Probably 30% of the time.
Yep.
Very,
I'm
very
surprised it's
little.
even that high, to be honest with you.
Very little. Well, the reason why I say that is because a lot of times it's me emailing, like, we have an accepted contract. I sit down
Yep.
to email title and everybody involved. I'll go back to the guy's pre-approval letter, see the email, attach it to the email. So a lot of times it's just because I've already sent them an introduction email with the
Got it.
information, and that's
Yep.
but that the I it is a rarity that I hear a true phone call from them without me providing them.
Wow.
A lot of times,
So,
as I'll add this, that as this, when you're on the seller side, and let's say we're working with a piece of resort property, a condo, that's going to require, again, a special type of loan product, or maybe it's a land deal, right? Land deal, there's not a lot of land loan options out there. And I'm sitting there, and before I approach a decision with the seller, it is wise to still pick up the phone and go, hey, so I don't care about your borrower. I need to know about these products. Because here's the thing, that's also a good way for me to learn who's doing them and who's not, but also be
right.
able to provide, hey, you've got a niche that I need to know about. So, but I also need to make sure that my seller's protected, that in the ninth hour, we're not crumbling, trying to scramble for, kind of a rescue deal, if you will.
Yep. So, from your perspective, if it's interesting when you think about that 100% of the time you're sending an email out to
Mhm.
the lender, and only 30% of the time does that person even respond to your email, which is hilarious to
Yeah.
me. I would assume that if you had somebody who actually did their job the way that I teach loan officers to do it, which is the moment you get that contract, the first thing you do, you dial up. You do your research on that listing agent to know a little bit about their business so
Yeah.
you don't sound like you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
You give them a call, you let them know who you are, introduce yourself, tell them how excited you are to work with them and how much you're looking forward to it, answer any questions they have for you, provide any credentials that they need and any information. If you got that call, how much would that impress you for a loan officer? And then would you then put that loan officer at the top of your list of somebody you'd want to work with in the future?
Yes and yes. The and I- Because we're all busy professionals, I don't necessarily always grab the phone every time I see it ring. You can't.
Of course,
Eh,
of course.
But a simple I will check my voicemail. Like I'm one of those that do. Um shoot me a text. Hey, left you a message. Just want to, introduce myself. Super excited to work with you. Call me when you can. Like those types of things really go such a long way because it gives you a peace of mind to know you're going to be put in the loop. You're going to be able
Yeah,
to have the updates that are needed. Like it is
yeah,
like I have a situation. I got a penthouse over here that's under contract, and I'm pulling teeth just to get when's the appraisal being done. Like and it shouldn't be that hard to go. Was it ordered? Yes. When is it? Don't know. I'll let you know. Okay. A week goes by. When is it? I mean, it's like, like, give me a break, dude.
yeah. I love it. So good to know. These are the kind of things that I believe are absolutely imperative
Yeah.
that loan officers do, is to reach out to those agents. And I'm going to ask you this question: what if that text message? I love the text message that you just poured out right there. It's
Mhm.
simple, sweet, short, to the point. Exactly what you mean. What if the loan officer actually did a video text message with that same thing with their smiling face on it? Would it mean more to you, the same to you? Would it make a difference?
Um, I don't think you. Here's. I love video. Okay, let me say this. I love the use of video within business. I think it separates just a little bit. Some
Yep.
of the type of programs that I've seen come out that are for video type texting and emails and things like that doesn't always get clicked. And because it's like it takes you, it opens up a new window and then you got it's that's the whole thing. I think it could be a little bit better doable by a true like I take my phone, or hit record.
Video message.
Hey,
Yeah.
dude, blah blah blah. Click send as a text. So
Yep.
there, like I said, it's the programs that I get from different people that I don't that doesn't get clicked on. But a true text message, I think, is much more doable. Um,
Yep.
like I said, for me, I'm such like I mean, I've got 4 kids. I'm doing a ton of stuff. I don't always have time to watch a video, but I can glance down at a quick text. So for me personally, I think either way was great. Just I think it's the effort of reaching out is the bigger thing. How you do it, whether it's via video or just via just some words on a screen, but regardless, it's the effort of reaching out, putting me into that system that when on Fridays or Mondays or whatever day you do it, and you send out that update of conditional approval done, it's like that is a bigger thing and lets me know that I'm going to be able to provide and be knowledgeable of the updates, whether I'm working on the buyer side or I'm working on the seller side. It's the just the effort of reaching out and the effort of providing the updates. I'm telling you, effort goes a long way. A long way.
Yeah. It does. I love that. So, if there was one thing that you wish lenders did that they don't do, what would that one thing be?
That's a good question. Beyond beyond the what we've already talked about, right? We've talked about
Yep.
communication and just being there. I think I wish that lenders had a little bit better knowledge in certain aspects of their own job. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I mean that in a growing and learning sense. Because there's a lot of lenders that I have come across, and you know as well, when you have a real estate boom, it seems like everybody gets into the business. You have new lenders, you
Yep.
have new realtors, you have new title.
Yep.
So you have all this stuff. And when you have people that come in, there is when you are dealing with a hard situation with a buyer and you have being able to have the ability to go, okay, I have to be one step ahead of you in every part of this transaction. And because if something were to happen, I have a plan B, I have a plan C, and I have a plan D. And it's knowing the ability to stay a step ahead and knowing if something happens, I can always do this. It may change this and this, but we can fix it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of lenders that I've come across that it's kind of face value. Like if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But they didn't go through the process to try to go, here's how I can overcome this problem and this problem and this problem. And I just it that is the that would be one thing that I think I wish lenders had. And those who are far experienced, they kind of been through enough of
Yeah.
practice to know that.
Yep.
But because
Yep.
there's so much of the new crew that have kind of come in over the last 5 years, there's just that's one side of things that I would love to see, and what happens is as my job, I have to know a little bit about everything. I have to know a
Yep.
little bit about mortgage and lending. And
Yep.
when I, because I have a relationship with my lender, I, by natural conversation, they begin to talk to me about, well, if we did this and this change, I mean, it allows me to also become more knowledgeable because now I'm able to talk to that buyer to kind of reinforce exactly what that lender was just saying to them because I now know that. And so that's the kind of thing that I wish I would see more lenders do. That they don't just come in and say, "Oh, we can do that, that, and that," and that. I mean, no, there's the if you are a true professional, you're really trying to grow, you're really trying to make it in the business. You really have to be willing to learn new things, learn new ways, new tips and tricks. It's so important.
Very cool. So, you mentioned before we got on, and I'd love to hear a little bit about this, that the real estate business is going to be changing quite a bit in the coming years. What are some of the things that you see on the horizon that you think are going to change in the way that people buy and sell real estate?
There's that is a loaded question. so, so a the NAR settlement, we'll start here because that's where we left off. The NAR settlement will create it's a lot more about disclosure. You're disclosing what
Hmm.
you're being paid. Okay.
Yep.
I love that a, that Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, I believe that they came out and said, "Hey, we'll cover buyer agent commission, and it's not wrapped into seller concession percentage." Love that. I think that really is helpful, and it puts the consumer first by
Yep.
doing that. So I love that. Um, I think that you're going to see it's going to take some time to go through this. I think it'll take a couple of years before we really start seeing some things, but there's going to be some consumers, because I do this for a living, I hear that consumers, they think that real estate agents are overpaid. They think that, we don't do anything. And I my goal is to show them by my work ethic that there are people who are like that, yes, but I am not one of them. Um,
Yeah.
and so we're going to see I think we're going to see a wave of um, discount brokers and whatnot that are going to come in, and they're going to try to capitalize on it because
Yep.
that's the way of the business. You're I'll be honest, I don't think we're going to see a significant decrease in commissions paid nationally. And I'll tell you why. Because pre NAR settlement, you saw, I'm going to come in, I'm going to charge you 4, 5, 6%, whatever percentage that they charge. We'll split X with the buyer's agent. That's done. Now it is easier to walk in and go, okay, listen, my professional fee's 3%. What would you like to pay the buyer's agent? Seller says, I don't want to pay one until we get an offer. So tell them I'll entertain a buyer agent commission, but I'm not going to pre-negotiate one up front. Okay, that's fine. Do you understand the repercussions of what happens if you were to do that? We may miss buyers who are, direct their agent. Yes, I understand that. Okay, cool. Well, let's do that. So they're only paying 3% at the signing of the listing agreement. You got a buyer's agent that comes in and says, okay, listen, my professional fee's 3.5%. Now it's a simple work into the deal. That's a simple shift into, we'll just put that into the purchase price and we're done. Oh, your lender can also cover part of that. Great. Now I'm paid 3.5 versus the 2% that I would have been paid 6 months ago. I think that that's part of the thing that we're going to see, that this is actually going to be a bite in the butt towards the sellers, because this started because of sellers thought, there was a whole disclosure issue and they didn't realize they were paying, and there was all this stuff that came up. But I think what's actually going to happen is, we're not going to see a shift in commissions paid, especially those that bring true value to the deal. So that's one of the things that that I'm seeing, and it's a very simple way to word it as you're speaking to a seller or you're speaking to a buyer, and but it's going to be interesting to see how this phases out. We're obviously, I think we'll lose a good part of the what I call part timer, where it's not a real profession; it's kind of a side hustle. I think we'll lose
Yep.
some of that as well, which is, for me, that's great because that's what I do. That's what I do for a living. Um, but but
Right.
but I do think we'll see a shift away from some of the part timers, and that will open up the market to those who truly take this on as a real profession.
Good. Well, great stuff, Michael. Appreciate all the insight and the wisdom. Let me close with the last question that I ask all of my guests. You've been very successful in your career. You're top 1.5% in the country in real estate agents. That's an amazing accomplishment.
Mhm.
Um, Tell me about who has mentored you in your life, and how much you valued that in your career, um, over your career, that has helped you get to where you're at today.
So when I first got into the business, I came out of an industry that was an e-commerce style business, and so I was, phone calls and emails. They really didn't freak me out because I was used to it anyways. And like, there was a couple of guys I was with a different brokerage back then, and there were a couple of guys that had about 10 years on me. Um, Family men, he and I both were, kind of, we served in local churches, and we did a couple things, and I just was. curious, asking him questions and wanting to learn and grow. And he was like, yeah, sure, come on in. And we'll, I'll let you just kind of shadow me. And we only did that probably 2 or 3 times. It wasn't that much. But what I took away from it was like, man, it just took so, like, I was amazed at just the willingness to go, I'm going to let you in on all that I do. Right. Because it does.
Yep.
And and there's a couple of other people that I did that with. Whether it was, that one was done with a lot with like cold calls and kind of general schedule production type of things. Then I did one that was a little bit more open house focused. I did one that was like I took people that I wanted to that were about 10 years ahead of me, and then I said, okay, how can I learn from this, but kind of make it my own. Like, I don't want to copy. I want to make it my own. But how do I copy that? And and the impact that it had on me wasn't necessarily made me productive. But what I learned is that if I share with you my secrets of the industry and the trade and what I do, you're not going to do exactly what I'm going to do. You can't, because you're not me. But
Right.
there's an impact that it will leave on you, and that whether you stayed in the industry or not, you became better for it as a person. And it's easy to get it's easy to let your pride kind of swell up and kind of beat your chest, especially when you're performing at high levels. It's easy to kind of be a know-it-all with other people if you don't have people that keep you in check. My wife is the best. She's incredible. And is she wants to see me succeed in every way
Yep.
possible. And when I look back in my career, the people that mattered, that were in my corner, even when stuff wasn't selling, even when stuff wasn't moving, I still like. You've got my wife who, she goes and she'll walk these listings and she'll just pray over the house, right? That's impactful for me because she's just as invested as I am. I look at my
It's
kids
cool.
and I go, I've got to get up. I've got to go to the office. I don't want to. I'm exhausted. I've got a migraine. I'm not feeling good, but they need daddy to do something today. And so there are people that have encouraged me, whether both in the business, but also I look at outside of the business, and they're like, my faith is a huge, huge integral part of who I am. If you meet me, you will there is a very good chance the name Jesus is going to come up because it's a part of who I am. And my faith
Yep.
is not separate from me. I know in the world that we live in, it is, they say you need to keep that separate. And that's fine. If me having a faith in Jesus makes you not want to do business with me, then we don't need to do business together, because that's who I am. And if you're hiring me, you're hiring that. And so there's just through life, there are people that have spoken into my life. There are experiences that has allowed me to go, hey, you know what? I'm not going to change who I am. If you want Michael Tomlin, you're going to get Michael Tomlin. And I'm going to work my hardest for you to make this transaction work. Buyer or seller, doesn't matter. But you are going to get who I am. And the opportunities that this has given me far exceeds any accolades that I may get. The accolades are great. It kind of shows, hey, he's good. He knows what he's doing. But at the end of the day, it doesn't truly provide me with fulfillment. The fulfillment of the business comes far beyond what how much money that I could make, what accolades that I could have, any of that. And at the end of the day, it's about giving back to others, and it's about pouring into um, it's just pouring into other people. And I say that from a stance of whether you're pouring into, for us, a new agent, right? Hey, let me show you, right? Or it's pouring into people in your community and pouring into trying to make your community better, you know? So that's
Yeah.
about all I got.
Well, I love that, and that's a great way to close out. You and I share a deep faith in Jesus
Mhm.
as the center of our lives, and
Yeah,
you know what? I love when you said, if you don't want to work with me because of my faith, that's okay. But the fact of the matter is, if we're living out our faith the way that the Bible tells us to,
right.
then people are going to want to work with us because we're going to be the best version of ourselves. We're going to work hard. We're going to be honest. We're going to do all the things that Christ amplified when he was on this planet. So
Exactly.
I love the fact that that's where you're centered at, and that's where I'm centered at. That's where Caroline's centered at. That's where Laurel's centered at,
Yeah.
and that's how we became friends in the first place. So it's cool to see that that is such a central part of what you've done, and it's also a key part of the mentoring side of what you do.
Right.
So let's close out. Tell us how people can, check you out, find you, get a hold of you, and I also know that, you and Caroline are doing a lot of work in ministry along with what you do
Yeah.
in your career, which they're both the same thing.
Sure.
You've got the Waves Ministry that you're helping, young girls all over the world,
Yeah.
not just you guys just got back from doing more of those, and then the
Yep.
Kingdom Collaboration. Take a minute and just share a little bit about what you're doing on that side, and then how people can get a hold of you if they'd like to talk to you more.
Okay. So this year, okay, let me back up. My wife and I run a 501c3 nonprofit called Waves Ministry, and she started it about 11 years ago, and she and I co-lead and run this ministry together. And like I said, it is a true 501c3, but like we got back last night from Colorado, we had a conference that we did and put on over there, and it is we deal with girls all over the world. We have other things that we want to do. Obviously, we love to expand, also pouring into the guys, because guys need it just as much as girls.
Yeah,
And but we really focus on calling and identity, because when you don't know who you are, it's easy to get lost into a lot of the kind of that you deal with cutting and depression, and you deal with anxiety, and you deal with all these identity issues that if you don't know who you are, all that stuff's going to stay. But until you know
yeah,
who you are, then you begin to kind of break free from that, because now it doesn't matter what you say that I am, because I know who I am and I know whose I am. So
yeah.
we are
Good.
that's a big part of our lives is waves. So between waves and real estate, and then 4 kids and running around schedules, like we live a pretty busy life. Um, but where you can you find me? I'm the easiest to find. It is literally Mr. Michael Tomlin on everything. Mr. Michael Tomlin on everything. And you can, from Instagram, you can message me. Heck, I think my phone number is actually on the Instagram. Like, you can call me from Instagram. Like, I'm very easy to get a hold of. I am there's a term in that brokers will use to agents, and they say, don't be a secret agent, like, don't let everybody know that, and so it's like, trust me, there's no secret, I'm pretty well found. So
Good.
so
Well, Michael, been great to have you. Appreciate you and Caroline so much, and
yeah.
appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to share with our audience. Always great to see you, my friend. Let's get
Yes.
together again soon.
Same.
Really appreciate this time today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It was good to see you and talk to you. And again, I'm easy to be found, so I'm always around.
Good. All right, guys, that is a wrap for another Batting 1,000, where we again interview the heavy hitters in the mortgage and real estate industry. Thanks for being with us today. God bless you. We'll see you on the next one.